Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some entitled parents. Our first story today comes to us from Brandy Aiden Love. Entitled mother and entitled grandmother tried to kill residents of a group home. Let's jump right in. Reading the post about someone else's experience in a group home setting reminded me about this. It was a lot more traumatic than it sounds, and I don't talk about it much. Sorry it got so long. Many years ago, I worked in a group home. For the privacy of all the residents, we had a set visitation room with visitation hours by appointment only. Appointment only so that two families weren't trying to visit at the same time. It had a separate entrance and a door that shut it off from the rest of the house. It had a half bath, a TV, cable hookup, game console, maybe 50 games, DVD player, and about 150 movies, board and card games, along with nice comfy seating and a small 4-person table. Visitors were not allowed anywhere but that room if any of the other residents were home. It didn't matter if Bill wanted to show off his new bedding set or if Jack's mom wanted to see if he needed new clothes. If the other residents were home, no. The families of 5 of the residents were fine with it. Kyle's mother and grandmother were not. They firmly believed they were within their rights to enter the rest of the house and inspect it and his housemates. He was their baby and they had rights by God. Actually, no. The residents of this home were 30 to 40-year-old men with developmental and physical disabilities. They were all actually wards of the state. The fact they were even allowed to know where he was, let alone visit, was a huge privilege. Our agency had many other homes where families of the residents had no idea where they were and weren't allowed to see them. The families were only allowed to contact the case manager and inquire about them. Back to Kyle's mom and grandma. It was a constant battle to keep them out of the rest of the house. It got to the point that we had to have an extra staff member during their visits. They had to sit outside the connection door while the visits were going on and physically stand blocking their way when they would attempt to enter. I lost track of how many times we ended up calling the police to have them removed from the main part of the house before that happened. That's when they started calling the police on us. After the 3rd time of them calling the police to demand entrance to the rest of the house, they lost their privilege of visiting. Kyle was moved to another home where they weren't allowed to know the address. This didn't go over well, to put it nicely. They were adamant Kyle was still in our home, and they threatened us several times that we would pay for keeping their baby from them. A restraining order was granted against them, keeping them 800 feet from the house, staff, residents, and no calls to the house. It all came to a head one night when at dark 30, I was locking up the house for the night. All doors and windows had to be checked and the alarm set. Another staff was doing bedtime medicine. The other 2 were helping out with bedtime routines and getting laundry going. I kept telling the other staff I smelled smoke, like a campfire, just faint whiffs of it. They said I was crazy. I had just walked the entire house and nothing was burning. It must be a neighbor having a small backyard fire or something, and I got a whiff while closing the windows and it was stuck in my nose. It finally was strong enough for the others to smell. In pairs, we checked the house again. Nothing, but the smell is getting stronger. We met back in the living room and decided to go ahead and call the fire department when we realized we could see wisps of smoke in the living room. We woke the residents and had them put on shoes and jackets. The smoke in the living room was now clearly visible and starting to make its way toward the bedrooms, and it triggered the alarms. Finally. Protocol was to evacuate and get the residents to the van. The living room was the exact center of the house with an open floor plan with the kitchen one side and a laundry room on the other. The bedrooms were through the living room and to the left and right, along with the 2 bathrooms, the visitor's room and our office being at opposite ends of each other. Down the hall, we shuffled to our office because the van was parked to that side and the keys in the office. As we came around the corner of the house, we see the source of the smoke. Our front porch was on fire. The house was brick, which was what was preventing it from spreading outward, but it was spreading upwards towards the roof. The police and fire departments arrived just as we reached the van. Fire department went to work on the house, police head towards us. We're all fine, except 4 people came running up to us. Kyle's mother and grandmother, along with 2 unknown men. The two women started screaming for Kyle, and they were here to rescue him. We had endangered him by allowing him to live in a fire trap. They suddenly realized there was no Kyle in the group and were now screaming that we had left him to burn in that house. They were suing us, they would shut us down, and have us in prison for murder. The police quickly asked if we had left someone behind, to which we answered no. We have all 6 men, but for their safety, we had to get them in the van, and then we would sort this out. The police held mother and grandmother back from us, while they continued to shriek about Kyle, and we had left him to die. 2 of the staff loaded them while me and my coworker talked to the police, starting with the fact those 2 women had a restraining order, and for his safety and ours, Kyle had been moved to a location unknown to them. They were cuffed immediately and told to pipe down. We proceeded to explain what had transpired that evening. The fire was doused quickly while we did this. One of the firemen came over to talk to the officers, and we heard him say there was preliminary evidence this fire was set deliberately. There would be a formal investigation. Kyle's mother and grandmother were arrested for violating the restraining order and suspicion of arson. The 2 men were arrested on suspicion of arson also. Results from the investigation determined clear case of arson. There was also a deliberate rigging of a device to the door leading out of the visitation room that would have been fatal to the person opening the door, and if anyone was close by, debilitating if not fatal. The 4 were indicted on vandalism, arson, 8 counts of attempted homicide, 2 counts of attempted murder. It came out that they were unaware of the other side door, which saved lives. They got a plea deal and got 7 to 10 years each. This was back in the early 2000s, so I don't remember what exactly the sentence was. So if I'm reading this correctly, they were going to burn their precious Kyle alive because they thought there was only one way out and they booby-trapped the way out? What the heck is up with that? There was a great quote down in the comments for this one that says, "All kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids." That definitely holds true, regardless of whether they're kids or adult children. And it sounds to me like Kyle is definitely better off being a ward of the state. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Angelic Beauty 112. Entitled Mother Abuses and Manipulates Me for Control Over My Finances. Let's jump right in. I'm writing this at midnight on a complete impulse. This is my entire life's worth of emotion, so it may be long and go on tangents a fair bit. As far as I know, it may not even be fitting here, but she thinks she's entitled to everything in my life. I need to get at least this story out. Backstory. My mother, 52, and I, female 18, have never gotten on properly. My dad, 55, works most of the time, and even when he's at home, he's in his office. So I spent most of my childhood, if not all, around my mother. We've never been on the same page about a lot of things. She's quite homophobic, transphobic, racist, basically any hatred against others you can think of, she's it. Meanwhile, I'm a trans girl who believes in complete equality, which means she and I have clashed over everything, from pride to ALM. I don't back down, even though we'll be at odds for days, and I just leave it until she apologizes. She's never changed her views, mind you. She just ignores any attempts to explain something I make and sticks to her guns. But at least it keeps the peace. She's highly manipulative and controls everything in my life through pure abuse. This is a very mild example, but I've been looking to try growing my hair out for a while just to see if it helped with my gender identity. My dad's completely cool with it because he thinks I'm just trying it out for fun. But my mom has become seriously nasty when I put the idea forward because it looks effing revolting. I mention anything about letting it grow, and she gaslights and manipulates me into getting it cut. Her actual technique changes every time, from straight up screaming abuse to days of ignoring me and even the "I don't know what you're talking about" card, and an attempt to keep the peace and keep myself safe. I give in every time. Also, I've tried coming out to her as transgender numerous times now. Every single time, she just told me that I'm a confused boy who made up a stupid fantasy. Has told me that she will never respect such a ridiculous request. And if I want to keep any kind of relationship with my family, I need to grow the F up. Since the last incident a year ago, I basically have shut her off in that regard. I'm open with my friends about my identity and happily go by my preferred name and pronouns when I'm living at my uni apartment during the week, but have to do everything possible to keep this life hidden from her. That even meant buying some feminine clothes and having them delivered to my unit and telling her that the bill was for some video game equipment. I'll explain that later. Story: when my 18th birthday was approaching, I found out that my bank accounts would be severed from my parents and made my own. They would no longer be able to access them without my permission, which requires formal setup with my bank. I let her know about that change, my first big mistake. And my mother says, "Okay, so when can we get permission to access your accounts?" I don't really think I want to do that. Why not? I'll be an adult, and I want to try and be more independent. If you need access in an emergency, I'll obviously give it to you. She's starting to get angry. "No, I need access to your accounts." What? Why? "If you don't give me access, you're not getting paid." For context, I do regular jobs around the house, so my parents don't need to hire anybody. I only get about $10 a week, but it's cheaper than hiring and I have no issue doing the work. I'm a neat freak anyway. Basically, she refused to just have the account details and started a week-long fight about getting unlimited access to all of my accounts. Her biggest swipe was, only days before my birthday, transferring every dollar I had, savings, work pays, etc., into her own account and threatening to keep it unless I gave her access once I turned 18. Those were a few thousand Australian dollars in those accounts, and I'm ashamed to admit that I gave in. About 2 weeks after my 18th, I signed a contract with my bank to give my mother access permissions. The first thing she does when we get home from that trip is go back through my account and interrogate me about my spending of a grand total of $40 on non-essentials in the past 2 weeks. I'm not ashamed to admit that $10 had gone towards some adult material, but thankfully, the billing address was pretty non-specific, so I just said it was for some filmmaking assets. I do not want to see a single dollar going out of any of those accounts again, or I will hide your money again. Since then, I've had to move for university. She told me, not suggested that we try it, but told me it would be like this, that I'd be commuting 3 hours each way, 6 hours total every weekday. My dad stepped in and managed to get her to see reason somehow, so during the week I have a partial break. She rings me every single night for a report on the day, including where I went, who I saw, and what I spent any money on that I didn't check with her first. Trigger warning, depression and suicide mention. But the last straw was a few months ago when my depression took a really bad spike one night. I've had that and anxiety since late primary school, and in the past few years it's gotten so much worse. I had brief counseling in 2019 after begging my parents for years to let me see a psychologist and being told I was just being stupid. But that was it. I was so low and lonely. I tried to talk to her about something that was on my mind, and her response, "For God's sake, just shut up. You have it better than I ever did growing up. Be thankful." She had a pretty abusive family growing up too, so I'm wondering if the chain of abuse played a big part in this. So I wanted to end things and was preparing to make another attempt using every pill I could find. Out of nowhere, my mother comes, swinging at me and hitting me, and eventually forces me to drop everything I was holding. I broke down and just told her about how I was feeling, about the sadness and loneliness, and how I just wanted it all to end. I told her about my previous attempts too. "Are you seriously this pathetic? This is just an attention-seeking move, and if you don't get an effing grip, I will drive you straight to a mental asylum. And believe me, you won't survive a night there." She used to be a mental health nurse. How ironic. That was it. I realized my mother was toxic and spiteful, and that I would never be able to tell her anything or live my own life while she's around. I'm not going to write anymore because this is getting way too long and tangential already, but what I've explained in this post is 1/8 of all the stuff she's done. I can't actually even begin to word some of the things she said to me and made me feel, and I've blocked some of it out because it just makes me cry to think back on it. But since that incident, I've been secretly planning things out so I can move and become independent permanently. All I'd need to do is cut off her financial access when I have the money. Also, a reason I haven't revoked her access to my accounts is because one of her many threats that she's made, and one of the few she's followed up on, is to kick me out. In high school, I ended up sleeping in an empty house towns over because I wanted to wear something she didn't particularly like. And I know very well that I could end up homeless if I stand up to her now. My best friends are all a long way away for university or travel, and I don't have enough money right now to secure any kind of stable living yet. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry for making this so long and pathetic, and it probably isn't even that bad. I just need to get this all out, so thanks for reading. Okay, number 1 OP, don't mention a single darn thing about moving out to your mom. I'd just start getting things ready and move anything valuable to your uni dorm. Number 2, check with your uni and see if they have any mental health services. They can't tell your parents because you're 18. They might even be able to put you in touch with the right people for financial help until you can get a job and get up on your feet on your own. The last suggestion is to check out r/Raised by Narcissists because you might find some people there in the same situation who can help you through this time. This story fits the same quote from the last story, by the way. All kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.